neutral sections and other general things with the loco. So WSML over Shap Class 87. Not so Class 87. There you go. So Class 87 is the same, very similar to the 86 in terms of how you drive it. So right, so welcome. On this tutorial I'll show you where the neutral zone warning board is, so you know how to look out for it, and the procedure for running down the loco for the neutral zone. So I'm going to talk about what these things are. So this is the 87. It comes with West Coast Mainline over Shap. There's also the Class 86, which comes with the West Coast Mainline North. It's just being held for an express service, which will pass shortly. Take the time to set up the loco and have a look around the cab. When you're clear to leave, accelerate up to about 80. So let's get the lights on the usual way. So now in here, right, so in here, I'm going to just freeze the camera a bit here. This is the really important bit, and we'll get to that in a minute. This is your forwards and backwards. It works pretty much the same as the others. You've got your normal brake controls over here. Wow, that's loud. So one thing to remember with the Class 87 is the brakes are actually slightly more realistic in that they will they'll take longer to apply and release if the train is longer. So when you're driving a long train, be aware that you're going to need to give it extra time to apply the brakes. So now we've done that, that's all the sort of the regular stuff. It's got the horn, you've got the wipers as usual. So over here, and let's freeze the screen about there, you've got the ammeter, which is how much power. Train going past, we're going to get the light in a minute. You've got the notch. Now think about this as the actual throttle, and then here you've got the regulator handle. Now what we're going to do is put the regulator handle in the middle, which is notch hold. So you notice that even though we've got a normal looking throttle here, yeah, it's not actually going to work like that. Let's get the brakes released and accelerate and just make sure how that works. I'm just going to cut the volume of the game down a little bit here. Right. Now the brakes are off. If I just press notch up, what happened was that went up one. So you did it again and the ammeter went up. Did it again and it went up. And I'm just tapping the A key. Yeah? So you see it goes up and then that comes down. Tap it again and it goes up. If you get it into the red, you run the risk of the engine overloading and it will shut down. So you want to just keep pressing the A key. Oh, we're speeding. So if we just drop it into run down, then this will just gradually come down. Once it's on 0, we're not applying power. So as we apply a little bit of brake, it's better. Now the brakes are off. That signal was yellow, Ed, because the train had already gone past us. So stick it back in notch. So the key thing to remember with the way that this handle works is you've got hold, which basically holds this at whatever it's at. You've got notch down, which is that one, which will knock it down one. Run down, which will run it all the way, just keep running it down. You've got notch up, and then we've got the speed limit we have. So if we just keep notching up for the time being. Yeah, so you can see we're building up power to the motors. And we're continually tapping these up. The expression is tapping. This is called a tapping controller. Right, so we're building up a bit of speed now, 27 miles an hour. Now, this is going to stay where it is, and this is going to come down as it needs less effort. Once we get to a point, we can push it all the way up into run up. Now that's going to just keep every second or so pulsing that up, and the power's going to keep going up. We need to keep an eye on it. So let's just put it back into hold. So we're still accelerating. If we wanted to say stop accelerating at say 70, so we do notch down, and that starts going down, and we start putting less power in, you'll notice we're no longer accelerating quite as much. So we can accelerate a bit more, and then we can notch down. So using your add, you're just tapping the A key and the D key, you can notch up and down. Right, let's just so we're pretty much evened the speed out now. Now you can see on here the names also appear for notch up or for indeed run down. So if you pull it down too far, if you pull it down too far, it goes into off. The power drops immediately. I now cannot apply power until this, which is now running down, has got to 0. Now it's got to 0, I can reapply power again, so I can get back up to a notch up. So if you accidentally pull it into off, the power disappears, wait for that to drop to 0. Okay, you can't reapply power until the notch, the notch level has gone back to 0 again. Right, so let's reapply power so we can get the speed going up again. We'll use run up, which is the maximum setting, and it's going to gently apply power. We can watch what actual power is being applied here. Once you get the hang of it, you won't spend all your time, zooming in and watching this. You just look at it down the side here, and you can enjoy the fabulous scenery on West Coast Plain known over Shat. Look at this. Lovely route, it really is. Just a reminder, this scenario is called Neutral Zones, and it's by PJT 1974. Lead says, which button is the ejector seat? There isn't one. That's another one I tell my kids when they're annoying me. I tell them I'll press the ejector button, because there's two buttons on each side of the radio in the car. One pops out for the volume, one pops out for the bass and treble, I think it is. And I just say I press the button and I'm going to eject them. They don't believe me anymore though, because they know it doesn't do anything. So we're 2.6 miles from our first neutral section. So let me step out here a minute while we're looking at them, talking about that. So neutral sections, you'll notice we've got all these overhead wires. Now these overhead wires are travelling over a really long distance, and it's not practical for these wires to be connected to the same substation. They must be connected to another more local substation. So what happens is they have a second power station or another power station further up the line that powers that section, and then there's a gap called a neutral section between them. And the gap is usually about, 10, 20 feet. In that gap you will get no power. If you stop in that gap, you're stuffed. That's it, your train won't move anymore. Normally they're on a hill though, so if you release the brakes you can roll back out into the powered section again. However, in most cases you'll be doing quite fast speeds as you hit the neutral section, so it's not a problem. What you do have to do is prepare the train though, otherwise you can find yourself getting a bit unstuck. So there's a warning message here which is added by Phil in the scenario, which is going to tell us what to look for. So there's signs on the side of the rail actually telling us when these neutral sections are coming up, and then all you have to do is react to it accordingly. So when we get to this neutral section, I'll show you. In fact, I'll fly over to it now. We just scoot down the line. This is where I find I've gone past it. I've probably gone past it at this point. I've gone past it, haven't I? Yeah, I went past it. Never mind, we'll do it the proper way. Oh no, it's over here, look. Just over a mile, you'll see a black warning board on your left. You'll see a marker on your HUD showing the position of the board, so you know when to look out for it. So this is where the black warning board is. So once we get to the black warning board, I'll pause the game, and then you can see it. So these warning markers you won't normally have, but this one, where they say like gas tank up, neutral section, you will have. So if you're using the HUD, you can see where these things are. When you see the warning board, move your power handle to the rundown position. So let's just pause the game in a moment. I think that's it there. So we'll pause the game. Oh, okay. That's it. Now we've changed the camera. That is our first warning board. The black with the white symbol on it is our first warning board. When you see that, start running down. Yeah, you have to be watching out for that because that's your first one. The next one is a white warning board, and that's one's right up in front. Now I don't know if I'll get to it until we actually move up closer to that neutral section. Here it is. But because the game's paused, it's not loaded any scenery. There we go. Now I'm going to run down. Right, it's a neutral section itself, so you've got some extra equipment and some stuff going on. Before we get to it, what I am going to do is just show you what to expect. So this is the other sign, which is the other way round. This is saying neutral section starts here. These are magnets that the train is going to react to, and it switches the power off. So you've got one magnet here to turn the power off, one magnet here to turn the power on, and what's between here is a neutral section. There is no power in that section. And what you'll find is that when we go through it, you'll see the line light, which tells us we've got power, will go out. Right. Let's get back in the train. So we're running down now, and the line that's going down. As you approach the neutral zone, you'll see a whiteboard immediately before it, and you'll hear the loco lose power for a second or two. So the thing to look at is that light, because that light will go out once we go over the first magnet. So here comes there's the whiteboard. We've run down, we're all safe to go through. Light out, light on. We're back on power again. In fact, you heard the fan spin down and back up. Right, once you're clear of the neutral zone, you can apply power to your loco. So now we just go back into run up, and we can apply power again. So, what happens if you get it wrong? So let's let the power come up. I'm just going to let the notch go up a little bit more, because the higher it goes, the better. Right, so now we're accelerating away. Let's say what happened now was the neutral zone. So that's just saying we can exit. That's the end of the tutorial. What happens is that the power drops. So if you watch the ammeter, as I hit that, right, the power drops. So that was what would happen if we went through a neutral zone without knocking the power down first. You would now have to put it into off, wait for the notches to come down, which they're doing. You can see it moving slowly. You cannot reapply power now until you put that on. Let me try it. Let me put it in run up. It's just stopped going down. I'm not applying power. We're just coasting. So we put it back in off again. Let it come down. Once it's all the way down to 0, we can then run up again. But it must go all the way down to 0 and settle. So it's all the way down to 0. Now if I run up, the power will come up, and you'll see the ammeter start to react. Let me stop moving my head. You see the ammeters coming up as well, proving that we're actually generating power now. So that is the That's the trick. If you find that you haven't got power, you may have gone over a neutral zone. You may have also dropped that in there, and you now have to wait for that to drop to 0. So if you're finding you're not getting any power, check that, drop it back to 0, and then bring the power back up again. I think that basically sums up everything you need to know. Right, so that's the 86, 87, and roughly how you use the tapping system and how you handle the notching. Brakes will still work, yes, Deadminer. You always have the ability to use brakes. They're not controlled by the overhead powers. They're controlled by the internal system. So yes, you've still got the ability to stop the train. The neutral sections currently only exist on the West Coast Main Line over Shap route and are currently only implemented, as far as I'm aware, on the Class 87. So if you run the Pendolino on here, then it won't cause a problem. It won't run. You just ignore the neutral sections essentially. Or if you run the 87 on the West Coast Main Line North route, then because that doesn't have the neutral sections, it won't do anything. What happens if you trip your circuits? If you trip your circuits, then run it down and let it come back up again, basically. Or it'll trip the circuits, it will basically treat it as if it's gone into off. Right. I think that's basically summing up everything there is to know about this particular train. Remember, when you want to bring it down, you actually want to bring it into... That was the AWS. You want to bring it into run down rather than going into off. If you imagine you're a passenger on the train, then you have to... then you'll find that you get this big jolt as the power suddenly vanishes when you go into off. Fault reset. That's a good question, actually. I don't even remember where the fault reset button is. So there's the fault light. Instrument lights. Fault reset. Yes, you do have to press the fault reset. I remember now. Yes, you do have to press fault reset. That's an excellent point, Ed. So we're coming up to our stop now. Single amber approach control. Not control F for the fault reset, no. Yes, it's this one here. So if you overcharge it and the fault light comes on, then press bring the power down, press fault reset, prove that light goes out, and then you can restart powering up again. Right, only got a mile to go. We might as well finish the scenario. So yes, thank you for Phil for creating this little test scenario. If you just want to test and practice the neutral sections, this is a great way of doing it. It doesn't take very long to run the scenario, certainly not to do that bit of it. Actually, I'm just going to press escape. It's just at this point, all we're going to do is end up going to a siding anyway. So that was the tutorial for driving the 87. I hope that was useful. Let me come back to the menu. So the question is, who wants to do one more short scenario, or do we want to call it an end now? I've got one more scenario planned, and it's not that long. It's only a half an hour scenario.